The next award is the How Could You Forget About Me award. Again, player or team. But a couple people and a couple teams been forgotten about, and I don't think, we think that they shouldn't. So, Matt, you want to go first? How could you forget about me?
As Brett Brown once said, James Butler. And his name is not James, it's Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Butler. He has been fantastic this year, and he has been the rock that keeps the Miami Heat
Yeah,
afloat, which is a backwards analogy, but whatever.
I hear you.
uh, he is dominating when he's played. They're 14-8 when he plays. They're 4-10 when he doesn't. He has a higher win shares per 48 and a higher box plus minus than he did last year when he led them to the finals. And not just like compared to himself, he's fifth in the NBA in win shares per 48, and he's seventh in the NBA in box plus minus. He's such a unique and fun player because he's a perimeter player who can't shoot threes. He's
Mm-hmm.
shooting 25% from threes, but he's so good at finding a way to get to the line, making the smart play. And he doesn't get like 28 points per game, it's 20 points per game, but then he gives great defense, and he just a completely unselfish player. And the Heat are going to rocket up the Eastern Conference standings as this season goes on. I think they're probably going to be the 4th seed. And I can't believe we wrote off the Heat after a bad start. Just not us, but like basketball media in general,
Mm-hmm.
when they have someone like Jimmy
Yep.
Butler, who is clearly an elite player in the NBA.
Yeah, you talk about that 4-10 without him. The bulk of that was in the beginning of the season when he was dealing with the combination of injuries and the COVID protocol when he was out for a couple of weeks. Then he came back, and all of a sudden the Miami Heat looked different. And like, everyone said that, you could understand that coming into this season if two teams were really tired. That's the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers, who both went to the finals. And everyone remembers the picture of Jimmy Butler over the stanchion on the baseline, just absolutely exhausted, and that doesn't just go away after what, a month and a half of a layoff, 2 months of a layoff. Like it still takes you a little bit to get back in the swing of things. And like that's just the ultimate professional, the blue collar player that is Jimmy Butler. I agree, man.
Yeah, I actually agree 100% with this because he did get injured for that long period of time, right? He
Hmm.
came back end of January. He's played 16 games, 4 triple doubles, 22 points, 8 rebounds. But is what really has put him on the map to me in terms of just like people aren't even talking about this. Almost averaging 9 assists since he's been back.
There you go.
He is doing everything for this team. And I say 4 triple doubles. He was a rebound short and an assist short of another triple double like 3 other times.
Hmm.
I mean, he sparked this Heat turnaround. I remember putting it in my big board video. Our team's about to make a leap, and I was like, Jimmy Butler's coming back from injury, and no one, Matt, you're right. No one's talking about this, and how could people forget about Jimmy Butler? And arguably, he's having one of the best seasons of his career.
Right.
I know it's early and he missed a bunch of games, but this stretch that he's been on since coming back from injury, if he can sustain this through the All-Star break and the rest of the season, this might be a career season for Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, he's not in like the mainstream chatter because the mainstream chatter is a lot of novice fans. You got to be like,
Yeah.
a next level basketball fan to really appreciate what Jimmy Butler brings. Because when he comes back, Mac talks about it. It's 20 points per game. He's not going to come back and give you 28 to 30. He's not going to come back and and give you like this crazy offensive performance. But he's going to come back and help the Heat in the ways that the Heat need help on defense. Someone to facilitate the offense. Someone to make the extra plays and the extra effort plays. And he comes back and all of a sudden the Heat start winning again. That culture starts getting cemented again. So I guess I can understand or, I can get how, people have quote unquote forgot about him, but you shouldn't because Jimmy Butler is going to make his presence felt more than just points per game. You know what I mean?
Facts. Facts.
Kyle, who'd they forget about, man?
Man, we've been forgetting about the Denver Nuggets. I
Yeah.
know they started slow, but they're very quietly 21-15 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it took them 15 games to get over 500, but since then, they've just been rolling. I mean, they're the Western Conference runners up. Can't forget about that. And they're coming into the All-Star break on a 4-game win streak and 6-2 in the last 8. I mean, this is a team that really, it probably surprised a lot of people, but they beat the Clippers in the 7-game series,
Mm.
and they were really an Anthony Davis game winner away from, making that series into something crazy. I mean, that would have taken
That
a
would be a
2-1 lead at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they've only lost to 3 teams who aren't sitting in a playoff position right now. So it's not like they're underperforming. It's like we're winning the games we're supposed to win outside of these 3, obviously. And hey, we're here to play. We were Western Conference runners up. And the thing for me that I really think people have been sleeping on about the Nuggets is they haven't even been healthy. Michael Porter missed a long stretch of time to start the season. Now, Gary Harris and Paul Millsap have been out. And that little stretch between where Michael Porter Jr. came back and before I believe Gary Harris got injured first, but when they were at full strength, they went 5-1.
Mm.
I mean, this is a team that you can't forget about because Jamal Murray, if you look at his numbers last season at the All-Star break, about the same. People saying he fell off, like, because last year in the bubble, you're like, oh, he's gonna have a breakout year, right? And he started a little slow, but he didn't really break out until the bubble. This is a dude that gets better over time during the season, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this Nuggets team maybe not do exactly what they did last season. I mean, they made a tremendous run, but I mean, this is a team that you have to look out for. And even though they're sitting fifth or sixth in the West right now, we know how stacked the Western Conference is.
Yeah.
And
And
this was a team that everyone was talking about in the playoffs last year, and we seemingly just forgot about them the first half of the season because they started slow.
in the last 12 games, Jamal Murray is averaging 28, 5 and 5 on 55% from the field and 47% from three.
Mama, there
He
goes
has
that
been
man. He coming. Carl, you said it. He coming. He
he's
coming.
coming.
He
Ridiculous.
coming.
He has
Well,
been red hot ever
here's
since that 21 of 25 50-point game.
Here's the thing.
Even before that.
People were rooting for the Nuggets so hard when the season started. They were like the darlings of the bubble. Jamal Murray was out there, them and the Jazz. But when you start the season so bad after going to the Western Conference Finals, like that, people are gonna start to move on from you. And I think they had the unfortunate coincidence of starting bad, and then teams like the Knicks and the Suns and teams that like people were like, where are they coming from? Are
Yeah.
starting to take over. So like attention started going elsewhere. And when you start lackluster, your second best player, some say he's their best player, but their second best player in Jamal Murray started the season, kind of slow and kind of rough. I think that's why people almost forgot about him or turned away from him.
I agree.
I was one person who didn't forget about them, but my attention did go elsewhere. Like there's other stuff popping off in the league, and
Yeah.
if you're not one of them, like I'm gonna look elsewhere. But now I think it's time to turn people's attention back towards that screen.
I
think it
fell
was
victim to the thinking that Jamal Murray just had a great run in the bubble and wasn't that good. And I like that I'm wrong because he's so fun to watch.
he is
is
fun to watch,
laughable.
and I think just a product of that slow start has been Michael Porter Jr. He only played the
Mhm.
first 4 or 5 games, and then that very game that he came back was the game they got back above 500, the
Yeah.
15th game, and since then, like who can say this team's been bad since then? No one.
No one.
I mean, I think they did start slow, but it's going to be maybe even like we see with the Miami Heat right now. Like these guys were there last year, and they're
Mhm.
coming. They didn't fall off. They didn't forget about last year. So I expect a lot from the Nuggets in the second half of the season.
They can be in the 5th, 6th, or 7th spot in the West, but I do think the Nuggets are in a comfortable position for themselves because
Yep.
they're still in a lot of people's rear view, out of a lot of people's sight. And, there's 10 less games to work with at the end of the season. So, you're going to come up on people very quickly. And, we'll see what the Nuggets want to do. Mine, for you forgot about the San Antonio Spurs. People forget that Greg Popovich is down there in San Antonio doing things. A lot of people forget that DeMar DeRozan is still a very good player in this league. Could have been an All-Star snub, or was, in my opinion, an All-Star snub. Vegas had the Spurs over under at 29.5 and 12th in the West coming into this season. They're gonna shatter that. Fewest turnovers in the NBA, second fewest fouls committed. That's the hallmark of a Greg Popovich team, like a disciplined, sound team, fundamental team. It is just always in that midst, not a not down and out team. Although they didn't make the playoffs last year, they still went to the bubble and were buying for one. So they weren't completely out of it. And I think, they're out of people's radar, but they're in a playoff spot right now, around where the Nuggets are in the Western Conference standings. And like if there's one person that you shouldn't ever forget about, I don't care what their team looks like, it's a Greg Popovich coach team. Like don't forget about them, man. Don't write off the Spurs just because Tony Parker and Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili aren't there. Doesn't mean this isn't a team that can't be a good team. Can't give people some scares at the right time come playoff time, man. Oh, y'all don't forget about the Spurs now.
100%. And it's more than just DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah,
I mean, they've had a huge year with Keldon Johnson, who's been great, but I think what people forgot is because he was hurt and you hadn't seen him play in a while was Dejounte Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Dejounte Murray was, before the injury, a really good point guard. Like up and coming, I'm not saying, superstar level, but in a Greg Popovich type team where you have a really good point guard, and he knows how to coach them, it's gonna work out. And I mean, I know LaMarcus Aldridge has been injured, but this team has persevered. I mean, what do you expect from a Pop team, right? But
Right.
18 and 14 going to the All-Star break, it actually surprised me when I saw that Vegas line that you guys put in the script there, because how can you ever think a Pop team's gonna have less than 30 wins?
That's crazy, ain't it? Like that.
Yeah,
Like I,
stupid.
that's crazy. And this is a guy who went to the playoffs for 2 straight decades. You want to talk about, they're gonna peg for under 30 wins with good players. Like
Yeah,
it's not like they have, they cleaned house and they don't have anybody there. Pop isn't there. Like they have solid veterans in DeMar DeRozan,
Rudy
and
Gay.
Rudy Gay, LaMarcus Aldridge, and then solid young talent. DeJounte Murray, you talked about Lonnie Walker, who a lot of people may not know how good Lonnie Walker is, but the Spurs faithful and everyone who follows the Spurs, they're very high on Lonnie Walker.
Yeah,
So,
he's starting to get a shot now too, which I
mhm.
love. I mean, I think I'm a little biased in being a Lonnie Walker fan just because he's from the area. Maybe you
Yeah,
are too, James,
same,
but
same, same from the Reading
he's
area.
really hit his stride lately. And what I just saw, and I know we talked about the Suns and the Jazz last episode, and like,
Mhm.
oh, they have 6 or 7 players in double figures. The Spurs have 8. Ridiculous how they're moving the
Ridiculous.
ball. Derek White has been hurt for a while, but you still count it. He's played enough games to count it, and
Uh,
it's ridiculous. It's what you expect from a top coach basketball team.
hey man, don't forget about them. All right, time to vote. Who's our don't forget about me, Kyle? Your vote counts first. Go ahead.
My vote counts first. I mean, I still got love for my man Jimmy Buckets.
Hmm, hmm.
Wish he could have stayed in Philly. And Matt made a great point. And looking back at it, the fact that he's almost at 9 assists on the year is ridiculous.
I
Given
didn't
that
know that.
his previous career high was 6. He had 1 season in the 5s, and he's been a career 4.5 assists per game guy.
Hmm.
So he's really taking that next step. And Matt's right. No one's talking about him. He's really, how could you forget about him? But I think we're gonna start remembering soon.
Yes, sir.
Denver
Matt.
Nuggets is my vote. They're if they keep winning, Jokic is going to have a good argument against Embiid for MVP, and I don't like that.
Yeah,
So it is the Denver Nuggets.
that's true. Little tangent before I vote. I don't know why the narrative is still who's your MVP and not Joel Embiid is MVP frontrunner. Who could take it from him?
Yeah.
Just a little. Just
They like to have LeBron in the conversation at all
I
times.
get it, but okay. But even when LeBron was in the conversation before, we've had years where it's his Steph's award to lose. LeBron could take it. This is
Yep.
Giannis's award to lose. LeBron could take it. To me, a guy is averaging 30,
I-
30 and 10 on 50% from the field and 40 from three, and his team is number one in the Eastern Conference. He should be MVP frontrunner. But I'll leave that.
Ridiculous.
I'll leave that for another time. My vote is Jimmy Butler. That you can't forget about him because
Yeah.
I think it's more egregious to forget about Jimmy Butler than to have turned your attention from the Denver Nuggets because don't forget about Jimmy Butler, man. Like, I don't know how many times that man has to prove himself that he is not to be forgotten about in the NBA circuit. So,
I agree. I know you got no votes, James, but I like the Spurs in this argument too. I think we
mhm,
had a pretty good, just pretty good nominations here.
I agree. Thank you for making me feel better about my nomination, man. 'Cause
Underrated Jimmy Butler thing from 2005 to now. The Minnesota Timberwolves have made the playoffs once, and it was when they had Jimmy Butler.
And now
Not
they're
a
the worst.
coincidence.
They're the worst team in the
Not a
league
worst
now.
in the league. No coincidence. Real quick, my fool's gold almost was Anthony Edwards. And I've defended Anthony Edwards a
Nah,
lot, but like as the first pick, they just didn't improve at all. But I know a lot of that it's not having Cat, so I'm glad it
I
didn't
think
go there. But
I feel like a lot of that is also in terms of you picking him is just how good Lamelo's been. Because
yeah,
Anthony Edwards has been fine. I mean,
And we
he's put
see
up.
like when people come into league at 19, we see people like take 3-4 years to get like really
yeah,
good.
you were a
Like
teenager.
Brandon Ingram wasn't anybody until his last year in LA, and
That's
until he
true.
was like 22.
And
So it's really hard to like, unless you're Fultz who forgets how to shoot. But if you're like building into your body and learning how to play in the NBA, you could have a really rough first, second year, but it isn't until like year 3 or
and
4
I don't
you
think
start to emerge.
and I don't think anyone would argue that Anthony Edwards is a top 5 rookie in the year this year,
Mm-hmm.
or in the league this year, possibly top 3. I mean,
Top three. It's him, Lamelo, and Halliburton for me.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yep, Sadiq Bey has actually been crazy too, but I can't put him in there yet.
Not yet, not yet. He had a good a good stretch.